I can still see that afternoon, as if it's playing on an endless loop in my head. The sun was dipping low, the air heavy with that late-day warmth that makes shadows stretch across the road. I was driving the familiar route to my son-in-law Daniel's place. He'd called the night before, about a loose door hinge. Nothing urgent, nothing dramatic, just the kind of thing I've been doing for people all my life. Fixing things, keeping the world from falling apart, or at least trying to. I was humming along to the radio, half thinking about the weekend ahead, when I turned onto his street. That's when I saw it. My wife's car, parked neatly, just inside the shadow of his gate. For a moment, my brain did that thing it does when something doesn't make sense, or no, it just no stalls. She'd told me that morning she'd be running errands across town. I remember the exact words, the way she didn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. I slowed the car, rolled past. My pulse started to thump in my ears. I parked 2 houses down, killed the engine, and just sat there for a second, staring through the windshield. When I finally stepped out, my shoes on the gravel seemed too loud. I kept my distance from the gate, but as I got closer, I could hear voices. 2 of them. Low, urgent. I froze. Laura's voice. "It can't go on. We've already pushed too far." Daniel's reply. "We're past that point. He can't find out. Not now." He? That was me. And in that moment, my chest went tight. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I just walked away. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to grip the steering wheel to hide it from myself. You know, I've been married to Laura for 27 years. We met when we were barely out of our teens. I was drawn to her fire, her independence. She was drawn to my steadiness, I don't know. The way I could anchor her, maybe. We built a life, raised Emily, our only daughter. Watched her grow from a stubborn, bright-eyed kid into a woman with her own mind and her own heart. Daniel came into our lives about 5 years ago. First time I met him, I shook his hand and thought, good grip. Looks me in the eye. Solid. He was polite, maybe a little too charming, the kind of guy who never seems ruffled. But over the years, I noticed things. The way his gaze lingered on Laura just a beat longer than necessary. A comment here, a laugh there. Private jokes I wasn't in on. I told myself I was imagining it. That's what you do when you want to keep the peace. That night after I saw Laura's car, I didn't sleep. I just lay there listening to the tick of the clock, thinking about the way her voice had sounded. Not guilty, not exactly. More cornered. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't confront them, not yet. I'd gather proof. So I played the part. I smiled at breakfast, asked Laura about her errands, pretended to be too distracted to notice her avoiding my eyes. I went to work. I made small talk, and in the background I started digging. Phone records were my first stop. I had the account logins, perks of being the one who set them up. Daniel's number popped up far too often on Laura's call history, at odd hours, short bursts like coded exchanges. Then I checked her email. Most of it was routine, but I found an archive folder buried 3 layers deep. Inside were old messages, going back years, some from Daniel. But here's the thing, the dates on the earliest ones. They were from before he and Emily had even started dating. That's when the ground shifted. One message from nearly 7 years ago read, "I saw him today. He has no idea." Another, "We have to be careful." If Emily ever puts it together, it'll destroy everything. Emily, my daughter. What did she have to do with this? I closed the laptop and just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling like my skin didn't fit right anymore. I started noticing more. Laura's tension whenever Emily and Daniel were together. Daniel's overprotectiveness toward my daughter. Not in a fatherly way, not even in a brotherly way, in some way I couldn't quite name. A week later, I was up in the attic looking for old tax files when I found a box I didn't recognize. Inside were photos, letters, and a worn leather journal. The photos stopped me cold. Laura, younger, maybe in her 20s, and next to her a man I didn't know, tall, sharp-featured, with Daniel's exact eyes. I flipped through the journal. The handwriting was Laura's. Entries about our secret, about the boy who needed to be brought back into the fold, about watching from a distance until the time was right. I read enough to understand Daniel wasn't just my son-in-law. He was Laura's son, her child from before we met, given up. And somehow, he'd come back into her life years later. Emily had married her half-brother. I felt physically sick. I wanted to believe there was some mistake. But the dates, the faces, the letters, they all lined up. And then it hit me. That conversation I'd overheard. We can't go on. He can't find out. They weren't talking about an affair in the way I thought. They were talking about keeping the secret buried because if I knew, I'd tear the whole family apart. I didn't know what to do. How do you even begin to handle something like that? But Laura made the choice for me. She suggested we host a family dinner. Just the four of us. Said it was long overdue. I agreed. That night I set the table myself, poured wine, tried to keep my voice steady. Midway through the meal I set down my glass and said, "I found something in the attic." Laura froze. Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Emily looked between us, confused. I told them about the box, the letters, the photos. I watched the blood drain from Laura's face. Daniel looked angry, but not surprised. Emily just shook her head. "What are you talking about?" she asked, and that's when Laura broke. She told her everything. The room went silent. Emily's eyes filled with tears, then rage. She pushed her chair back so hard it toppled. Daniel tried to stand, but I stopped him with one sentence. "Sit down. We're not done." I told them I had copies of everything, that if they didn't come clean to the authorities, for the false documents, the lies on the marriage license, all of it, I would. Laura begged. Daniel cursed. Emily just cried. In the end, they all left that night in separate cars. I haven't seen any of them since. People think betrayal is about love or sex. It's not. It's about truth. And sometimes the truth is so twisted, you wish you'd never found it. But once you do, there's no going back.